Thank you for joining us here on the National Communications Network as we continue our conversations surrounding Budget 2024. This year, the budget total is $1.146 trillion and is under the theme Staying the Course, Building Prosperity for All. To have this discussion with me in studio, I have three distinguished young people who will share their thoughts and insights on Budget 2024. But before we get into the meat of the matter, I will allow them to introduce themselves to you. Start with you.
Thank you, Shukwan. Thank you for having me on your show once again. And I am Dr. Josh Kanhai. I am no stranger to the world of politics, and I am the President's Youth Advisory Council co-chairman. I am also a general medical doctor at the Georgetown Public Hospital. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for having me, Shukwan. My name is Ellen Gopaul. I currently serve as the president for the Youth Action Network of the U.S. Embassy. I am a former youth parliamentarian, and I am an entrepreneurship student.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me, Shikwan. I'm usually in your chair, but most persons would know me from Common Sense. My name is Matthew Wall. I am the founder of Common Sense, a financial literacy podcast, as well as the host of the Economy Business Conference, a conference that is geared towards helping young people develop their business knowledge and business acumen. I am also a tax auditor at the Guyana Revenue Authority, and I am stranger to politics, but I always welcome opportunities to share my views and insights on matters of national development.
Yeah, definitely. Clearly, all three of you are qualified enough to have this conversation with me now. Now, I want us to start off our conversation with you guys sharing your general thoughts, your overview thoughts of Budget 2024. And Dr. Kanai, will start with you.
Well, Shukwan, that is a hefty, hefty budget. $1.46 trillion.
Yeah.
That is by far the largest we've ever seen for Guyana. And that in itself make my skin grow
Yeah.
because that means a lot of development for this country. That means a lot of roads are going to be built, a lot of accessibility is going to happen. That means a lot of persons are going to get access to better infrastructure. When it comes to health, I should say, we're going to have a lot more going to be done in terms of development. Development is key, especially for the young people. And this budget is encapsulating all of that. As we said, it's theme under prosperity for all.
Yeah.
And it's Guyana just being the phoenix rising from the ash, as we had last year's budget. That budget is going to be phenomenal for this year. There are things that in the budget that we will touch on very specifically,
Yeah.
but the budget overall, in one word, is just phenomenal.
Indeed. Ellen?
Shukwan, the budget is the largest in terms of absolute size, but it's the smallest in terms of relative to GDP. And when I first read through the budget, I looked at it from three parameters. So I was looking at it from in terms of growth, sustainability, and also inclusivity. So those were the three parameters from which I looked through the budget.
Yeah.
And from my observation, I saw we've had growth in terms of large infrastructure projects, and these are multi-year projects that are ongoing. We've had inclusivity for youths, not just within the culture and youth allocations, but across all sectors. We've seen where those effects can be multiplied throughout all sectors for youth. We've seen allocations for women and girls. We've seen allocations for persons with disabilities. In terms of sustainability, Guyana remains the leader for blue energy and green energy. And these are some amazing things we see coming out of that budget. But also, it's important to note the surroundings of this budget from the overall frame, because we've just come out from a pandemic. We've had the Ukraine crisis and Russia, the war, and we've seen the effects of inflation and commodity prices. And so we've seen the improvements that the government has made to help with the cost of living during all of these circumstances. And I think that budget really, as Josh mentioned, plays an integral role for young people, not just young people, but prosperity for all people.
Yeah. Matthew, your thoughts?
Well, I am usually not overly enthusiastic about budgets as many people are, as many Guyanese are, because my main concern is seeing the results and the outcome of these lengthy presentations of our national budget. Now, I think that many Guyanese people have reservations about anything as it relates to economics and finance, and that's because of our general history in terms of uh, administration after administration sometimes make lots of lofty promises, but when it comes to delivering results, it's a different story. But I want to analyze the budget from the realm of results versus what is budgeted. Now, every year, the budget increases. I always hear people talking about this is the largest budget ever. Every year, we have a largest budget ever. So I don't think there's anything to give credit for. But what is worthy of recommendation are the measures that are within that budget that ought to increase the standard of living and the quality of life of all Guyanese. And I think that we are on that path of increasing the standard of living and the quality of life of all Guyanese. But we also need to, throughout the year, ensure that we hold the government accountable to see them do as they have budgeted. Now, I don't know if any of you guys have a personal budget, but you would know that in our personal lives, we don't always stick to our budget. Uh, this month, I might budget to spend $10,000 on entertainment, and then I have a rush of blood. I go to outside, and then I'm spending $20,000 or less.
Yeah.
But the point is, sometimes we don't stick to what we would have budgeted. And I think what is important is seeing the tangible outcomes of all of the lofty goals that we have within our budget, particularly in the infrastructural sector. I am a proponent of heavy capital expenditure, and that is one thing that I really admire this government for doing. I know previous administrations have spent largely on current expenditure, but capital expenditure not only benefits now, but benefits future generations. Things like roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, community centers, all of these things have long-term sustainable effects. And I'm always a proponent of government spending on capital expenditure more than recurrent and current expenditure. So we see the plans for massive road networks, we see the plans for massive bridge networks, we see the plans for massive hospitals in New Amsterdam and throughout other regions and schools. But we want to ensure that there is value for money. We want to ensure that there is quality and smart spending. And it behooves us as the general public to ensure that we hold our politicians and our government accountable to ensure that our taxpayer dollars are spent efficiently and effectively. And that is what I'm most looking forward to over the next few months in the year, to ensuring that my taxpayer dollars, your taxpayer dollars are spent efficiently and effectively, and that the projects that are budgeted for become reality, ultimately benefiting our lives, our standard of living, and our quality of life. Another important aspect that Ellen mentioned is inclusivity. We want to ensure that each region, each demographic benefits equally from the resources that we have. Of course, Guyana is in unprecedented, experiencing unprecedented growth. I was particularly impressed with the growth in our non-oil GDP because it's that sector that is needed to ensure long-term sustainability of our economy, because oil is not going to be here forever. And we can't become too over-reliant on the oil and gas industry. And it's good that there are measures that are being put in place to ensure that the agricultural industry, our services industry, mining industry continues to grow. So I think that we are on the right path, but I want to ensure that we hold our government accountable and see results from this 1.146 trillion.
Yeah. Matthew, you spoke about the measures that are in place that you believe will continue to see that growth in the economy. One of the things that government announced, or the minister announced rather, in the budget presentation, was specific support to small businesses. And for small businesses this year to get $450 million. And not only that, but also ensuring that there is a collaboration with commercial banks so that they have better access to loans and stuff like that. How do you see this impacting the small businesses here in Guyana?
I think that small business development and entrepreneurial development is very important towards the growth of our economy. There's a common phrase that says private sector is the engine of growth. And many times I hear Guyanese criticizing the government for being private sector driven, which I find to be very strange because private sector development is what will ultimately propel Guyana to new heights and to new dimensions. So I'm very optimistic about the measures that have been put in place specifically for small businesses. I feel like many times you hear about all of these cocktail networks, you hear about big conferences, and sometimes small businesses can be overlooked. So it's great that the government is placing significant emphasis on seeing small businesses grow, not only by giving them grants, but making it easier for them to access finance. If you speak to any small business owner, their chief complaint is about the difficulty in accessing finance. You listen to the business support organizations like the GCCI, they're championing access to finance, which is a big issue because, of course, capital is needed to spur business growth, to spur business development. So I was particularly pleased when I heard the Minister of Finance announce that we're partnering with the commercial banks to offer lower interest rates for loans up to $5 million. And I think that I want to encourage every small business owner to ensure that they tap into this promise, ensure that they benefit from this promise. Of course, it behooves them to ensure that their financial records are in order.
Right.
Of course, the bank, not because the government says that we're going to be giving $5 million loans at lower interest rates. It means that the commercial banks are just going to accept any proposal.
Right.
The proposal has to be feasible, has to be viable. You have to ensure that you have good financial management systems and records to benefit from this facility that the government is collaborating with the commercial banks to offer. So I think that it's a positive development. It's a positive step in the right direction. And I would want to encourage the government to continue to seek out more avenues, more initiatives to propel small business development and small business growth. Apart from those initiatives that you've mentioned, I think the Ministry of Tourism and Industry and Commerce has been doing a relatively great job in terms of providing training, providing mentorship, providing opportunities for small businesses to grow. Access to finance is very important, but ensuring that small businesses develop the skills, they have the knowledge and the education to benefit and translate that finance into actual growth in their business is very important. And I see the Ministry of Tourism doing lots of work in terms of training, in terms of providing educational initiatives to ensure that small business owners are knowledgeable and can effectively serve and operate their businesses. So I think the Ministry of Tourism and the government as a whole can be commended for their initiatives towards small business and development and growth.
Ellen, if we can shift our focus a little bit to youth, and by the way, guys, if there's any other thing that you'd want to add, feel free to do so. We've seen just about $4.6 billion go specifically for sports and community ground enhancement and ensuring that young people have the opportunity to further participate in sporting activities. But we've also seen $2 billion for culture, for arts, and for the growth of those particular sectors. Share with us your thoughts on the importance of government continuing to support these sectors.
Certainly, for the longest time, young people have been calling for the enhancement of sport and community grounds. And if you have a look around at Guyana, some of these sporting areas and facilities are very limited, especially within hinterland areas and regions. So the vast amount of money that is being channeled into these areas is very much welcome. The young people are excited for these developments to occur. As you mentioned, we have 4.6 billion for sports, and then we have 2.7 billion allocated for arts and culture. And then that's just for sports and art and culture. We aren't even talking about the 1.1 billion that is being allocated just for youth initiatives, which could also be channeled into sports and arts and culture if that's what they're also interested in, which a majority of them are interested in, right? But within all of the sectors, whether it's business, whether it's sports, art, or culture, we have a major opportunity that is presented to us. We have a lot of resources that we can expend in these sectors, but also we have a major challenge across all of the sectors, and it's how do we ensure that these opportunities are translated into real tangible results. From the conversations that I've had with young people, they say, we see the money and we hear that the money is coming, but we're not seeing the development as we would like to see. And so that's a challenge, and it's an unprecedented challenge also, and that's a challenge that I think the government would be able to overcome, taking into consideration the opinions and voices of young people. So we want to ensure that we see the results coming out from these developments taking place. I was having a conversation with Josh prior to this, and we were talking about what that 2.7 billion means for art and culture. And as Guyanese, we are very hospitable to accommodating, where we love to take on other cultures, and sometimes we can lose our own sense of
Right.
unity and culture amongst that.
Yeah.
So I want to see more emphasis being placed on our mashramani as opposed to carnival. Carnival is great. It's wonderful that we can embrace Caribbean cultures. We identify more with the Anglophone Caribbean. But how do we channel some of that same energy into our mashramani and into our schools? And it has to start from a very young age. So pushing more for art and culture activities within schools, having more art classes and promoting more Guyanese arts. These are some of the things we can see coming out from those specific allocations. In terms of the 1.1 that's allocated for youth initiatives, being that I'm involved in a lot of voluntary work and I'm also the president for the Youth Action Network, I think for us as a voluntary community, this means a lot, because when we want to do projects, funding is a major issue. Young people have so many ideas across the board, but the first thing they come and say is, oh, well, we have difficulties in coming up with fundraising ideas. Sometimes they say they're not getting enough support from corporate Guyana. And so when you have government intervention such as this, I think this also helps to support them and also motivates them to get the work done. And it also establishes a better sense of community amongst all young people. So this is something that we're really looking forward to.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kanhai. And I use doctor very important and specifically there because we're going to be shifting our focus to healthcare. 12 new hospitals are expected to be built in this year, completed rather, in this year. A number of other mechanisms through cervical cancer and a number of other initiatives. Talk a little bit about the importance of healthcare and expanding our healthcare through Budget 2024.
Yeah, Shakwan. Well, health in itself is free for all Guyanese, and it's going to remain that way. And that in itself is a gift and it's a blessing. Investing in health is what we see this budget looking at. $130+ billion allocated, far more than what was allocated last year. And you said 12 hospitals are going to be built. You see, with health, there's several components to it. There's infrastructure. When you have the infrastructure, you have to get the resources.
Right.
So the infrastructure is one of the main aspects while concurrently developing your human resources.
Of course.
Some 3,000 plus young people are going to be part of initiatives for nursing. New Amsterdam, we're going to see New Amsterdam and Suddy getting brand new health facilities where they can have more training done. And then we're going to see the addition of a larger Cuban brigade coming to Guyana to assist with our human resource capacity. I believe that these infrastructure projects, they are very relevant, especially those specialty hospitals for pediatrics and gynecology. They're very special because we have all of these specialists, and we're not limited, I would say, at GPHC. We're getting stuff done. We're working in our environment. But to have that refreshing feel of an entire large hospital just dedicated to the pediatric doctors, you imagine how much more medical students would want to go work there and specialize in that field. And then not only that, it's going to be a large infrastructure, but it's going to have technology that will make work easier. and not only easier, but it'll make diagnosis accurate. It'll give the doctors a sense of, that feeling that we get when we actually can save a life and we can actually diagnose and prevent certain issues from happening. That in itself will help us to now battle that effect of us having doctors being taken away to go to UK and go into other parts of the world. So once we can provide that facility that doctors are comfortable in, I think that we can very much retain and stop that brain drain in the medical field. As I said earlier, there's a lot of nurses are going to be trained as well. At least that's one of the projects that has been hammering on from since last year. We all know we have that nurses deficiency. A lot of nurses are ended up in the UK and throughout the world, and we have some really good nurses. Imagine they're going over there and they're performing,
Right.
and that is what we need to see here. Once we have those training done in our country and we can take them to that level and retain them in our state-of-the-art facilities, I think that would be massive. And you mentioned a bit about the cervical cancer. Cervical cancer is one of the most rampant cancers in Guyana. It's at the top five, and it's very much seen in the hinterland regions. That provision that is made in the budget for cervical cancer for women, that is going to give these outlying regions a better outlook in getting that diagnosis earlier. And of course, earlier diagnosis, you can have earlier treatment and lead to better outcomes. So that in itself gives us the capacity to enhance our human resources, because now we're going to be saving lives. Now we're going to have more persons around to help and to put a helping hand in the society. Other than that, we see a lot going on with technology now for medicine, and that is an aspect that this budget also focuses on, and it's something that us doctors have been parroting about for the past couple years ongoing, and even doctors before me have been saying that they've been asking for telemedicine, they've been asking for proper record management on online systems, and the medical record state is currently paper based, and we are getting to that point where it's all going to be online, it's all going to be computer based. We're going to have servers. GPHC has actually started that process and spearheaded that process. And now we're going to see all these smart hospitals being funded and popping up, whereby they're all going to be connected. So a person coming from, let's say, Letem, all over their data are going to be in Georgetown. So the doctors won't have to call and study what are we treating exactly when they're coming out with no information sometimes. So these are some of the core aspects of medicine. Additionally, I think this budget also focuses a lot on the chronic diseases, and those units are very, very important, because the chronic diseases are the root of all of the diseases. I want to say the root of all evil, but that there is a big focus, and the units have to see that their work is not just going to be for the adults, it's got to be for the kids. They have to take it into schools. They have to take it into the younger generation and start teaching them from young. So I think that addition to the budget, that's how it should be utilized by the chronic disease units. There's a lot going on at the Luzignan Health Center, whereby they're planning to launch an app to online to monitor and diagnose, monitor mostly diabetes, and that in itself will pave a way for the telemedicine aspect, where all of this again can be integrated. You see, medicine in itself in this country, a lot of persons have a lot of negative sometimes to say about the public system, but it's the public system that keeps this country together, especially the health system, because there's a lot of persons that they probably can't afford the private system, or they probably just don't want to go to the private system. But I want to say that all of the specialists in the public system are in the private system. So when you utilize the public system, that is where you can get some of the best health care. And that is where this entire budget for health is going to be focusing on, to get these infrastructure sorted, get the human resource sorted, and after that we're going to get all the technologies to combine all three of these parameters and make health a grand show for Guyana. And everyone can have access to it again. It's free, and we're going to continue to make it free. More than likely, in all of the foreseeable future, as we get closer to the UG education becoming free too. So, definitely, I think health in itself is a large aspect of the budget and very much focused.
You know, a few days ago, I had the opportunity to go into Mock Arcadia, and Minister Indar, Minister McCoy, Minister Parag, they were all there. And what they were trying to do was get a lot of the young people signed up and registered for training in heavy duty equipment, in welding and fabrication, and a number of other technical areas. We know that BIT is now receiving $500 million, up from 400 and something million last year. And we see government trying to put more of an emphasis on that. I wanted to talk a little bit about the importance of technical training, but also to incorporate into that a little bit education and how education and the investment into education can, in the long run, benefit our country as a whole. Ellen, I'll start with you. I'll take Matthew, and then we'll go to Dr. Josh.
Education and youth are the foundation of a society, and they go hand in hand. So placing that amount of investment into the education sector for young people is an immense step, firstly, especially if that with that magnitude within the budget. And when you upskill young people, and not just young people, because it'll benefit many other persons, when you upskill them, you provide many opportunities for them for jobs within the sector. We know that currently we have a labor force. We have opportunities that we don't have the labor force to cater for. So we're trying to bridge that gap. And secondly, there's so many multiplier effects, because the more I think about it, I'm noticing, because if we're also providing these trainings for them, and they let's say they want to take an entrepreneurial path, there are also ways for them to access that financing now from other provisions made in the budgets, right? So this is really amazing, you know. And I think not just the training aspect, but the free UG education. As a previous UG student and all of my UG friends, they're very excited for this. But also, we've seen not just making UG free in phases and repaying some of those student loan debts, but we've seen the construction of a new health sciences center at UG, and we've seen four billion, I think, allocated to UG for this budget. And I think what most persons would have also wanted to see was a little bit more money being allocated to UG in this budget, because UG has been saying that sometimes this is not sufficient for them for their operations. But we do know that we have all of these other scholarships going on. And what I want to note as a young person is that we want to take advantage of all opportunities. How are we providing the best and the brightest opportunities for young people, whether they're studying here in Guyana at UG or they're studying abroad through the Gold scholarship programs, right? So making both accessible and also placing emphasis on both.
Matthew, share with us your thoughts on how this can impact the common man.
To further add to Ellen's point, I would want to commend the government for their initiatives as it relates to training, education, and in totality, all of the initiatives that are aimed at helping young people and the common man. I want to touch on three aspects. There's this program whereby they're employing persons to work part-time and giving them, I think, $40,000 per month. And I think that's a really great initiative. But I think that initiative can also be further enhanced. As would have been mentioned, there's currently a massive labor shortage. You heard the private sector, you heard His Excellency has been mentioning it a lot. And I don't know if we can probably add an element of training to that program, so all of those single mothers and persons who are generally unemployable that are able to utilize this initiative to earn some money, we don't want them to remain unemployable, right? So maybe you can add some training to that to benefit from this. Maybe you have to take a course in a specific area so that eventually we can move them from being unemployable to employable and also develop their skills, competencies. So that is a great initiative that I think that the government can think about further bolstering to ensure that these single mothers and persons who are generally unemployed that have been making use of this program can further move themselves from that position of having to do these part-time jobs to being fully incorporated into the public or the private sector. Another aspect of that program as well that I would hope to see coming out this year. If we're bringing on 10,000 persons to work part-time jobs in our public sector, I would want to believe that we should see some level of improvement in the delivery of public service in our country, which has generally been a sore point. You go to certain public institutions and you have to wait hours just to get a very simple document. Uh, we are a country with a 1.146 trillion budget. We're one of the fastest growing economies in the world. And I think it's time that our public sector reflects that in terms of its performance and its delivery and its efficiency and its effectiveness. So I would hope to see a significant improvement in the delivery of public service. I know that public servants have been complaining about salary increases, and I do believe that later on in the year there will be a salary increase. But in the very near future, I would want to see salary increases linked to performance appraisal. I know that these comments might not be ones that generally people like to hear, but I'm no stranger to making controversial statements. I believe that salary increases should be linked to your performance on the job. I think that there are many public servants that have not been delivering when it comes to their day-to-day jobs. And as citizens of Guyana, we can all attest to going into a public institution and not being given the best customer service, or a very simple task that should take no less than 10 minutes, taking a week, 2 weeks, because of institutional bottlenecks. So I would want to see eventually, instead of just giving an across the board increase, or probably reducing the level of the across the board increase and increasing the level of, I give you 20% if you perform, if you meet certain targets. And where I work, I have to meet certain targets, or else I fail the performance appraisal. So I would want to see that scheme applied across the general public sector, across all ministries, all semi-autonomous agencies, all government agencies. Performance appraisal linked to salary increase. That solves two issues. Public servants being paid what they deserve to be paid. I believe that there are lots of qualified persons within the public sector that should be paid more, but it also solves the issue of the inefficiency of public sector delivery, right? Secondly, the Gaul initiative. I've seen in a few quarters some criticisms of Gaul, of the Gaul program. And while I do hear these criticisms, I would want to encourage any youth watching this program, take advantage of any free education that you can get. You're getting a scholarship to study at universities, international universities. You're getting a scholarship to study at the UE. You're getting scholarships from the University of Guyana and other educational institutions. Take advantage of them. I'm currently on a Gold Scholarship. I never thought that I would be on a Gold Scholarship, but I'm on one. And I had my reservations about the program initially, but I can say without fear or favor that the Gold Scholarship has been beneficial. I've developed myself intellectually. I've developed my skills and my competences, my knowledge base. I'm about 3 months away from completing my master's through Gaul. And I dare anybody tell me that my scholarship or that my master's is of a lower quality or of a lower degree to any other university, that is nonsense. So I would want to encourage any youth watching, don't allow yourself to be swallowed by negativity. Don't allow yourself to be swallowed by things that you may see on the media. If a scholarship is available, get yourself educated, get yourself certified, and ensure that you benefit from the opportunities that are available. You need not to worry about all of the extracurricular that comes with certain things people may be saying X, Y, or Z. You go develop yourself and you benefit from what is available freely from the government. I think, finally, there have been some increases in the income tax threshold. which has removed, I think, about 13,000 persons from paying taxes. Uh, as a working young man, I think everybody in Guyana, including the ministers of government, would love to see a decrease in the PAYE. Uh, I think that is something that hopefully within our next budget, we can see a significant reduction in PAYE given the increasing revenues that the government is earning from the oil and gas industry. I think that would benefit significantly most of the uh, persons, most young people, most people generally in the public sector and in the private sector. And the common man will have more disposable income to spend uh, to further enhance his standard of living and his quality of life. So I think all in all, there are initiatives that are being implemented that the common man can benefit from. All of the training programs that you would have mentioned, the technical areas especially. Truck drivers in Guyana currently are being paid more than most persons in the public sector, which is amazing,
Facts.
right? There are lots of other technical areas that are not glamorous, but that I would want to encourage our young people to tap into these areas, qualify yourself, and go benefit from the opportunities that are available.
Perfect. Dr. Kanhai, as we wrap up.
Yes, well, definitely. I think Matthew expounded on that portion there in the end where truck drivers are making a lot more than a common man in the public sector, and that is quite true. An excavator operator in the back dam, and even now on the road, would make about 600,000 sometimes at the end of a month. So, coming back to your point with BIT and its inclusivity in this budget and having a higher form of income or a form of revenue for greater expanse throughout the country. It's something that is a master move. It's something that we have to encourage persons every time we go into a community and we see a youngster. A lot of the youths, they're not going to be inclined to get into the book work. They're not going to be inclined to become lawyers, doctors. Don't want to read, etc. But they're really good with their hands. Carpenters are now, the laborers are now making like $7,000 a day. Specialist workers are now making like 10,000, 12,000. That's what a doctor makes in a day. And these guys that can work with their hands and have this special skill to do so, they're the ones that we need to target. And that's what I think BIT should get into the communities. They have been in the communities, they have been to a lot of these career fairs that we held last year. And they're getting the young people out. As you said, the ministers would have gone into communities and done that. And that is what we need to do as young people ourselves, because we can't allow foreigners to come and take these jobs that we can do. And while our people are there starving and our people are saying that, hey, we're not getting work, there is work out there. There's a lot to be done, especially in the practical sector. Welders, we need a lot of welders. We need a lot more operators. Operators for excavator, bobcat, front-end loaders. These are things we need immediately. Persons to make blocks. Entrepreneurship comes up, and that's where the small business fundings come up, because blocks are an essential part of all this construction that we're doing right now. So if we can get young people into these programs, these practical programs, and even so get the schools geared towards seeing like, hey, this kid is in Fort Farm. He's not so inclined to doing principles of business, chemistry, sciences, but he's good with TD. He's good with his hands. Get him into this mentality whereby, hey, this is what you like. Let's mold you into this fashion, and these are the paths you need to take. So career guidance is where education and teachers need to focus on, and I think there's a large budget there for teachers to actually utilize in their sector and in their scope to put students into the right career paths. And as Matthew said, there might be some increases again this year, hopefully, fingers crossed. But I think teachers do deserve it, and the public sectors, they do deserve that increase. So all in all, the whole scope of this practical jobs for young people, it's something that we need to focus on, and we can't let the foreigners come and do these jobs that we can do.
Phenomenal.
Shaquan,
Sure.
briefly, further to the point of training, I think it's also noteworthy to mention that training is also being provided to persons with disabilities.
Yeah.
And I was mentioning in the beginning that when I was analyzing the budget, I wanted to look at it from three three phases or 3 points, and that's growth, inclusivity, and sustainability. And we've seen that inclusivity because when you raise up the weak, well, not necessarily the weakest, but those persons in our society becomes so much stronger, right? So that's really commendable that we continuously invest and train those persons with disabilities, and we make allocations for them.
Perfect. This conversation has been an extremely enlightening one. I want to thank you all so much for spending some time with us, dissecting, analyzing, and of course sharing your opinions on Budget 2024. Before you go, give you a few seconds, Josh, Ellen, Matthew, share your closing remarks on Budget 2024.
Well, budget
And of
20
course, sorry, what you would like to see going forward.
well, definitely budget 24 is a phenomenal one. And going forward, I would like to see a lot more focus being emphasized on persons that are less, let's say, less fortunate, persons who are in that category that they can't provide or they don't see a scope to provide for themselves. Maybe we need more funding in those brackets of human services and social services, whereby they can go out more into the field, get more social workers, get more persons on the ground, have a budget to do that, so that these persons can have that guidance. Because as you said, if we can bring up more and more persons, Ellen, if you can bring up a lot more and keep our human resources to that capacity intellectually, and we can go out into the fields and get it done, I think that's something I would want to see for the future budget.
Perfect.
Some other things I've noticed in the budget, Shaquan, I've seen that there's been a sort of proactive approach in this budget. I've seen there's duty and VAT free on fire equipment, and that indicates to me a very positive response to some unfortunate incidents we've had in the past. It shows to me that we're taking the right step forward. But also when I've spoken to a lot of young people, we've mentioned all of the great things they're doing for persons with disabilities in training, but also some of these persons with disabilities were very thankful for their training. They're also saying that they want to see a little bit more increase in the public assistance to help them offset some of their daily costs of living. So that would be really amazing if going forward when we plan these budgets, we can allocate a little bit more to these sectors. I know we have competing priorities and we have to decide what really we're going to invest the money in. And when young people hear that we have all of these oil finds and they're thinking, oh, there's so much money. And it's good to manage those expectations. You want to manage those expectations, but also you want to help soften and cushion the cost of living for those persons specifically. So I think more can be done in that regard. I also stand staunchly in my advocacy for more funds being directed towards the University of Guyana. But overall, I have to commend the budget. Again, the three areas. There's growth. We see that there's growth is being done, and not just growth for now, but we see long-term growth, right? We see that provisions have been made for women and girls, for persons with disabilities. We've seen provisions been made for youths and underprivileged communities, which those youth initiatives can trickle down into. And this is my call. I'm making a call. When you're making these proposals for these youth initiatives, please focus on your proposals for underprivileged and marginalized communities. That would be really amazing for that 1.1 to trickle into,
Yeah.
And also, we see sustainability because we're continuing on this path of sustainable development. So Budget 2024, prosperity for all, that's the route that they're going to take, and we're excited to hold our government accountable, and we're excited to see these benefits for everybody, every single Guyanese, as we progress for one Guyana.
Yeah. Matthew, concisely.
I think those were some great points made by Ellen and Josh. In wrapping up, I would just want to encourage our viewers and the entire Guyanese public to hold the government accountable. And in December of this year, when we're doing our reviews, I would hope that at least 80% of what was projected and budgeted has been actualized. And once that would have been done, it means that Guyana would have experienced definitely a great year, a phenomenal year. And I want to commend the government, but I also want to ensure that now that the budget is passed, it's going to be passing in a matter of few weeks, that the work now begins when it's passed in terms of delivering on the promises that have been made to the country. In terms of recommendations, I would just want to see some lower duties when it comes to the importation of cars. to make it more easy for the common man to own his own car. I think that more can be done in terms of the reduction of taxes, like I mentioned earlier, PAYE as well as corporation taxes to spur even more private sector development. And finally, I would really hope to see significant progress on the gas to energy project. Uh, Electricity is a big man in our country. We're not going to get into blackouts and so forth, but we know that manufacturing sector, which has been growing despite high electricity costs, imagine how much more it will grow when hopefully we can realize the gas to energy project, which is projected to cut our electricity costs by over 50%. So I would want to see significant progress on that initiative, which has been budgeted. I don't know the specific amount, but I know it's in the billions, as well as the completion of the Damar Harbor Bridge.
Yeah, perfect. You've heard, of course, from three distinguished, I would say, young people who've shared their thoughts, their insights into Budget 2024. Continue to tune into the National Communications Network as we continue to analyze, look at, and share our insights on Budget 2024. With that being said, my name is Shaquan Gill, and I'm saying goodbye for now.